In this Onshape video, we're going to look at modelling a piece of flat pack furniture, a coffee table that could come from a Scandinavian supplier, and we're going to use it to explore the way in which we can use some of the design studio tools within Onshape to help us model our ideas quickly and efficiently. This video is suitable if you've followed any of the other tutorials, but also good if you've not used Onshape before. However, you do need to have your Onshape account set up, so make sure you watch the video on BriPlayer for how to do that. So we're going to start off by creating a new folder where we're going to put all of our work. So I'm just going to call it Flat Pack Furniture. Would be better if I could type. And I'm going to create that folder. So that folder will appear in my Onshape documents. I've got quite a few that I've been working on. If you're new to the software, this will be quite empty. You can see some of the recent ones I've been working on as well. Again, that will be empty if you're new to the software. So I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to go to the Create button and left click on Document, because we're going to create a new document. And this is going to be the Ring Coffee table. So just take a short while for the modeling view to load up. Now, if you're new to the software, you'll see that we've got these three work planes here, and along the top we've got lots of tools, and over here we have a list of all the things that we've done, including the original three work planes. Basically, the way the software works is we draw a sketch onto a work plane, and we turn that sketch into a solid object using a feature, and we can use that to model the various parts. Now, if we were just doing something very quickly, we might just want to model something as one part, just to be a representation. Maybe we want to trace over it to help us with our design sketching. But in this instance, we're going to be making it as a proper assembly. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the tabletop. So I'm going to right click on the top work plane, and I'm going to select New Sketch with the left mouse button. If I press the N key on the keyboard, or if I right click and select View Normal to Sketch Plane, that top work plane will spin around now so that I can see it looking down. So it's like a flat piece of paper that I'm drawing on. And you can see that Sketch 1 has opened up here, and we've got Sketch 1 over on the left hand side as well. So I would always recommend thinking about where the origin is when you're modelling. Now, the origin is where the three work planes that we looked at, the top, the front and the right, overlap each other. And this can really help us, especially if we want to mirror parts or mirror features. So in this case, we're going to use a centre rectangle. So if we go over to the rectangle tool, click on the arrow and come down and select the centre rectangle, we can click in the middle, and then we can drag out or open out a rectangle, and then we can left click again. Now we want to give this some dimensions, some sizes, so we're going to use the dimension tool that's here. Now you may find if you're using a slightly smaller screen, you can't see all of the tools, and occasionally you'll see there'll be a tool with an arrow next to it, similar to the rectangle tool here. There'll be a little arrow next to it, and you can use that to come down to other options. So I'm going to use the dimension tool, and I'm going to dimension our rectangle. So our table is 900 millimeters long, so I'm just going to type in 900, and I'm using the middle scroll wheel of the mouse to zoom in and zoom out. I could also right click and select zoom to fit. Now you'll notice that using Onshape is a lot easier if you've got a mouse plugged in. Okay, so we've dimensioned that length 900 millimeters, and I'm going to dimension this length 550, so 550 on the keyboard, hit enter, and that's our tabletop. So if I hold the right mouse button down and move it around, you can see that I've drawn a rectangle that I've dimensioned to be 900 by 550 millimeters, but effectively that is infinitely thin. If I turn that sideways, it almost disappears. So what I want to do is I want to give this some depth. I want to turn it into a solid shape. So to do that, I'm going to click on one of these tools. So these are feature tools, and by clicking on this one I can extrude that up. So if I just move that round, you can see that that's going up, and it's actually going up a distance of 25 millimeters. and it shows us the direction. I can change the direction by clicking on that arrow there, and I can change the dimension. So if I just select the dimension, I want that to be 50 millimeters. So I type in 50 and hit enter, and it will update it. So that's the size that I want, and I'm going to click on the tick. So that's actually the basics of the first part that we've drawn. However, we need some holes for some screws to go in to attach the legs. So I'm going to use the right mouse button and spin that around so I can see the bottom. I'm going to right click on the bottom face, and I'm going to left click on new sketch, and I'm going to press the N key so that I go normal to the plane that I'm sketching on. Now what I want to do now is I want to put some screw holes in here for the special screws that attach the legs. So I've created sketch 2. You can see I'm in sketch 2. This time I'm going to use the circle tool, and I'm going to go center point circle. Now for the moment I'm just going to go somewhere over towards the top left hand corner, and I'm just going to drag out a circle, and it doesn't matter what size it is or quite what the position is because I'm going to dimension that. So I'm going to go back to the dimension tool, click on the dimension tool, click on the top edge, click on the center of the circle. If I don't click on the center of the circle, I'll click on the edge, it will dimension to that point. Now I want this distance to be 30 millimeters, and then I'm going to do the same on the left hand edge and go to the center of the circle, and I'm going to make that 30 millimeters, and I'm now going to dimension the diameter of the circle, and I want that to be 6 millimeters. So hit 6, hit return. So it looks quite small in the overall shape of things. Now I actually don't just want there to be a hole in this corner, I want one in the other 3 corners as well. Now I could draw those separately and dimension those separately, but actually I can save myself a little bit of time. So I'm going to use the mirror tool here. So I'm going to click on the mirror tool, and you see it prompts me, it says select a mirror line. Now I can actually select the edge here of one of the other work planes. So if I select that as the mirror, and then I select the entity to mirror, which is the hole. Let's make sure I'm selecting the circle. Okay, and you'll see that appears over here. I'm just using the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to click on the mirror tool to turn it off. So I've got that drawn. I'm now going to click on the mirror tool because I want to do another mirror function, but with a different mirror line. This time I'm going to click on the edge of the other work plane, and I'm just going to zoom in and make sure I select the circle and zoom in and out again and select the circle, both with the left mouse button. So I've got those 4 holes now. So now I'm going to create a feature. So I'm going to click on the extrude feature again, and I'll just spin that around sideways. Now you can see at the moment it's defaulted to adding, and it's trying to pull these out as if they're little pins. I actually want to remove material. So you can see by clicking remove, it's realized the direction's got to change, so it's done that automatically for me. But the distance is set to 25 millimeters, so I'm going to click on that and enter 4 and 0 for 40 millimeters and hit enter. And then I will click on the tick to confirm that. Now if I zoom in, you can see that it's gone in, and if I highlight it, you can see the depth, and if I spin it around, you can see it's not come out the other side. So that is the tabletop done. So what I'm actually going to do, if you look down here, we've got part 1, and part 1 relates to our tabletop. So I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to click on rename, and I'm going to call that tabletop and hit return. Now if you look down the bottom of the screen, you can see that we've got the part studio, which is where we're working at the moment, and then we've got an assembly where we can properly assemble components. We can put them together and we can give them constraints so they don't move away. But in our part studio, we can actually draw several different parts. We don't need to just draw one part in every part studio. And that's really helpful for something we call top-down design, whereby we're modeling the parts as we go along and we're making sure that they fit together by making them in the same model. We're not making lots of individual parts and then trying to assemble them afterwards. So in this instance, we're going to model one of the legs. So I'm going to click on the bottom of the table again, so right click on there, and I'm going to create a new sketch. And I'm now going to press the N key so that I zoom onto normal to the plane I'm drawing. And I'm just going to use the mouse wheel to move into the corner. And again, I'm going to use a center point rectangle. I'm just going to hover that so that it picks up the center of our circle. And I'm going to drag that out just so it's just inside the tabletop. And I'm going to click. I'm now going to dimension this. I'm going to use the dimension tool. And I want that length to be 50 millimeters. Now I also want the other length to be 50 millimeters, but again, I can use a little tool to help me. We have some constraints. Now you may find, again, if your screen's not quite as big, you've just got the coincident constraint showing. You might have to click on the arrow next to that. But the one I want is this, the equal sign. If I click on that line, which I know is 50 millimeters, and that line, which I want to be 50 millimeters, it will make them equal. And you can see that it's actually changed color from blue lines to black lines to mean that that's fully constrained. So we've effectively said where we want the center of it to be, and we've given the length of the two lines, and we know it's a square. So if I just rotate that round now, we can see that as we extrude it. So I'm now just going to extrude that part. Now you can see it's adding at the moment, which means that it's going to turn this new part as part of this part here. They're going to become the same part. We don't want that. We want this to be a new part. So we're going to click on the new, and then we're going to change the length. And the length of our leg is 400 millimeters, 400. So hit return, it will update, and then we can click on the surface. Now you can see it's actually drawn this or modeled this in a different color, which shows it's a different part. And if we look down here, we can see that we've got tabletop and we've got part 2. So let's rename our leg. So right click on it, rename, and we'll call it table leg. Hit enter. So we've got our second part. Now we need to do some other operations on this leg and to make sure that it is ready for the assembly. So the first thing I do is just going to spin it around so that I'm looking on the inside edge, and I'm going to right click on that inside edge, and I'm going to create a new sketch. And I'm going to use our center point circle tool, and I'm going to press N so that we're looking onto the work plane. I'm just going to zoom in so I can see the leg, and I'm just going to hover down the bottom, and you can see that it's picked up the bottom line and it's picked up the middle of that bottom line. So I know I'm going to be lined up in the center, and I'm just going to come up. You can see the dotted orange line, and from that point I'm just going to drag out a circle. I'm now going to dimension that circle. Now I only want that circle to be 2 millimeters, so it'll go quite small. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension to the center of the circle first, and then I'm going to dimension the diameter. So I'm going to pick up the bottom edge of the table, which is also the top edge of the leg, and I'm going to pick up the center point of the circle, and I'm going to just come over here. I'm going to put the dimension out the way of the model, and I'm going to change that to 213 millimeters and hit enter. And you can see it's gone up slightly, and now I'm going to dimension that circle, and I only want that to be 2 millimeters. So this is actually a pilot hole for a screw that will hold a small bracket onto the leg. So I'm just going to use the right mouse button, hold it down, spin the model around so I can see what's happening, and I'm now going to do an extrude, and because I want a screw hole I'm going to go remove, so it's changed the direction, and I only need that to be about 8 millimeters in, so I'm just going to change that to an 8, and then click on the tick, and you can just see the small hole in there if I zoom in with the scroll wheel on the mouse. So zoom back out. Now the other thing I need to do is I need a matching hole on the top of the leg to the hole that we got on the table for the special screw that holds that on. But at the moment I can't see the top surface of here. So if I go over to the tabletop, if I hover the mouse over it, the little eye appears next to it. If I click on the eye with the left mouse button, it hides the tabletop, and now I can see the leg. So again, I'm going to right click on the top surface of the leg, and I'm going to select new sketch. I'm going to press N so I'm looking down on it, and I'm going to use the center point circle tool. Now again, I could dimension the position of this, but it's going to go in the middle, so I can hover over the middle of that line and hover over the middle of that line, and if I come across, can you see that it remembers that I was hovering and it knows that I want to draw a circle in the middle. So I can left click to position the circle and drag it out, and then I can dimension it. And like the other hole in the tabletop, I want that to be 6 millimeters in diameter. So just hold the right mouse button down, spin that round slightly, and again I'm going to do an extrude. I'm going to click on remove, and I'm going to change the distance to 40 millimeters. Hit enter and then click on the tick. So I'm happy with that. I'm now going to make sure that I bring my tabletop back up. So I'm going to left click on there, and you can see that we have both of those components. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to draw the shelf, the kind of magazine shelf I suppose it is, that fits in to the bottom of this tabletop. That would normally appear lower down, and it makes sense to perhaps try and draw that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new work plane. At the moment I've been using the top work plane or surfaces that I've already modelled to create sketches on. This time I'm going to create a new work plane. So to do that I'm going to use the work plane tool, which is this one here. So I'm going to click on the plane, and you can see that it says offset and it wants me to select an entity. So I'm going to pick the bottom face of the table. You can see that the arrow is bringing it down and it's doing an offset distance of 25 millimeters. If I just spin that round slightly, it's quite difficult to see the distance because it's not very big, but you can just about see that it's trying to draw a new work plane. I actually want that distance to be 190 millimeters in distance. So I'm going to put 190 in, hit enter, and it's come down 190 millimeters. And now I'm going to click on the tick. Okay, so that's the work plane. Now I need to draw the sketch. So I'm going to right click on the work plane and go new sketch, and then I'm going to press N to go normal to it. Now it's actually showing me the underside of the table, which is good. If it had flipped around the other way, that wouldn't matter. I could still draw exactly the same sketch. I'm going to use a center rectangle again. I've already got the center rectangle tool selected. I'm going to start from the middle again, and I'm just going to drag out a rectangle that's not quite as big as the tabletop because we're going to dimension it to the right sizes. So I'm going to use the dimension tool, and I am going to dimension the length of the table 880 millimeters. So I'm going to type in 880 and hit return, and you'll see that it's just a little bit shorter than the length of the tabletop. Should be 10 millimeters at each end shorter. And then I'm going to dimension the short edge of the shelf, and that's going to be 440, and hit enter. And you can see that that actually lines up with the edge of our leg, which is right. So they're the right sizes. I'm just going to use the right mouse button now to spin that around. So I've got my sketch. Now I need to extrude that to make it into a solid shape. So I'm going to use the feature tool, extrude feature tool, and it's going in the right direction. I want it to extrude downwards, but in this instance I only want it to extrude 10 millimeters. So type in 10 millimeters, hit return, and click on the tick. Now you can see that at the moment this is grey and that's grey. So what I've actually done is I've added this to the leg. Because they're touching, it's allowed me to add it to the leg. I didn't want it to do that, so I need to change that. So all I need to do, if I want to edit a sketch or edit a feature, I can right click on the feature or the sketch over here, and I can left click on edit, and I can change that. So you can see before it was add, and it was the merge scope. What it was going to add it to was the table leg. I want to change that so that it says new, and you can see that part 3 has appeared down here, and I can click on the tick, and again it's turned into a slightly different color, and I'm going to right click on that and rename that and call that table shelf. So that's the first tutorial completed. We've done the 3 main components that make up our coffee table. In the next tutorial I'm going to show you how to model the fasteners, and in a third tutorial I will show you how to assemble everything. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.